Well, hello everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Um, so we will be talking about the future of product, presented by Manav. And so a little bit about PM Dojo, which we are presenting the event. It is a diverse learning community for people from all walks of life. Our mission is to make tech more accessible and more inclusive. And we're founded by Bosky, which is her entrepreneur and a product leader with over 2 decades of experience. Our unique product Accelerator is a 10-week apprentice style learning program to enable product enthusiasts to gain practical experience and skills for you to be able to break and transition into products. And we do this by allowing you to launch and ship your own product. And you get to be in a diverse team, collaborating to solve some real world problems and launch a product with lifelong mentorship and community. So our applications right now are open for the spring cohort for January, and you can apply at pmdojo.me/product-accelerator. And you can connect with us on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. We are all a community. So that's a bit about PM Dojo. Now I'm excited to introduce everyone to our speaker, Manav. So he comes from a diverse background and has lived on 3 continents. He believes technology should be used to create value, and he's very interested in social impact. And I'll also let him to continue introducing himself. Take it from here.
Perfect, thanks, Sharon. Just gotta go back to my intro slide. It's actually pretty, you should never let a speaker introduce himself. I feel I'm on the spot right now, even though I have to do it 12, but yeah, so hey, I'm Manav, I'm 27 years old. Even though the topic for today is the future of product, I'm a really amateur in product right now, I must say. So we're looking today into this presentation through a lens of somebody who's been in product only for last couple of years, officially only the last 8 months right now. So as a person, I believe we are empowered, especially in a place where education and in a situation where we do have jobs, we should think about making a social impact. That's something that I look forward to. I mean, just giving an example, we just had the IPCC report come out for the climate change. As product managers or as entrepreneurs, we should think how to think about sustainable solutions for people all around the world so that we can solve such problems that actually help move the needle from 0 to 1 and not just business or money. And that is what that guides me towards becoming better in my job, better excelling on working products that actually solve real problems and provide some value to people. As a person, I love learning. I'm always learning. Maybe I'm learning too much. I have to always listen to my nags from my girlfriend to get away from my laptop. So it's good, it creates a balance that she's there. But I also believe in sharing of knowledge to provide value. And that's why I'm here with the help of Bosky and Sharon as well to give me the chance again to come on PM Dojo and share with this community my learnings, my views, and obviously this is more so of a conversation. And then in the end, we can have a good Q&A session where I can answer your questions and also ask you guys some questions given the experience that we have today to the community that has joined live. So the topic today was the future of product, right? So, but if you think about product is really vast. Product is product marketing, product is product design, product is product ops. But I really wanted to look at product management. So that is the space I'm in. That is the space I'm passionate about. And I guess that is a space where most of us who are on the call want to move towards to, or we are in this space and we've already been in that space for like 2 decades, like Bosky has done already. So the agenda for today is going to be what is product management? I want to think about, if you're thinking about the future, we want to understand what their trends have been in product management historically and where we are moving, what their disruptions have been currently in our world, which also enhances or makes product managers think about their practices to make it more refined, thinking about processes, and then thinking about an adaptive focus on past, present to move on to our future. Because whatever we have done in the past is our present, and whatever we do in our present is going to be our future. And then we're going to have a quick Q&A session in the end. So as a typical product manager, I want to start with data first. I guess evidence to support your hypothesis or your argument is the best way to support that you have some value for the conversation that I'm going to proceed further with. So this presentation basically encapsulates my feelings about future of product management based on my mere experience, observation, and numerous mistakes that I've already made in the last 2 years. According to Google Trends, let's say if you go onto their website and if you search for product management in the last 20 years or since 2004, it didn't look super rosy, I would say. In order to proceed further with my predictions in terms of the future of our profession, it's going to help us a little bit to dig deeper into this data. So looking at the trends that we see here, it turns out in the beginning of the past decade was something of an inflection point for product management. We can definitely see that in the year of 2008, when the recession took place, then we can already see the streamline going down. But after or later on 2013 or 2014, interest in our profession is recovering from what was a decline beginning to the back of the data set that we see here. So perhaps unsurprisingly, interest really bottomed out in the middle of 2008, as I already said, but the absolute lowest level was in December 2011. That is some data that we can't see here, and I obviously didn't want to put up too many pie charts or bar charts here to make you guys confused, but I hope this visualization helps you out to understand how product management is currently trending in product people for the last 20 years. So since my career in product has spanned out in the last couple of years, there have been a lot of changes already, but let's talk through the lens of my mentors, because I have a lot of mentors who have been in product management for too long. And what I've learned from them is that product management is just more mature now. How do I support that? Because if you look at our early 2000s, things were a bit Wild West. There were no practices in terms of product development. There was no Agile Manifesto that came in 2004. There was no concept around product market fit. People who generally made decisions, let's say what we call as product-led in enterprises, were generally managers, basically working in an output setup and not an outcome setup. And those were things that we are seeing that were slightly shifting. If you are a product person, you would know who Marty Kagan is. And thinking about him, it's already been a decade that he wrote his first book, Inspired, in 2008. So it's already been about 12 years since that book came out. And just more than 10 years ago, Eric Rice, his book, The Lean Startup, came out in 2010. The Trello board did not even exist. Asana was still freeware. Nobody knew apart from Jira or Atlassian that was existing. And as recently as 2016, we were still improving prioritization. Different frameworks such as the RISE framework was introduced to us in our product community. So what we've seen is that we have been maturing gradually, but the important point that I've realized, at least from my perspective or from my lens right now, is that all these things were not built for product managers. These things that we see here were built for startups. These things were basically built for people who were rather in design, I would say, who kind of formulated this perspective that they need to have this practice of making better products. And that is something that product managers took in. So, and when I'm in my position right now, I'm basically forced to see where the events are happening right now. And I wonder only where we can go forward from here. So my career inflection point as a product manager, last 2 years, I can already see a lot of changes coming in. So we just had the COVID pandemic taking place. We already had so many product management practices take a change. We had Miro board come in, which allows us virtual collaboration for planning, for roadmaps, for everything that we want to do. We had Figma come in to support our design stakeholders. and to basically form a better storyline in supporting of our user interviews. So definitely there has been a changing dynamic there. So moving on further, what I want to say is about trends. I think trends are something that keep us peaked as product managers. As product managers in whatever space or domain that we work, we want to make sure that we are building the right product and solving a customer problem. But we also want to have an eye for what the people expect or what the people are speaking right now in their language in terms of a trend that they're following or something that we already see to have a competitive advantage to our competitors. So given from the product school report, artificial intelligence is a really hot topic right now. So that doesn't come as a surprise to me coming from a computer science background. I studied computer science for 4 years in University of Windsor. And even though we say that software engineering or a coding background is not important, especially for a person not working in a software space, but all products today are software. All products today involve some sort of development. So this AI topic is definitely becoming a really important skill for product managers to have, and is definitely the next biggest disruptor in my view. Remote working environment. So we just faced COVID. We already knew the term digital nomad that came into inception back in 2010. Technology had advanced, people were moving around the world to basically work. But remote working for product managers is somehow peaked to a point where everyone has their own opinion. As for me, I would say I like to work as a product manager at work because it brings me more. I work with a lot of execs on a day-to-day basis. So I'm part of a lot of strategy meetings. It just helps to be in person, but obviously given the conditions that we are in and also with the Delta variant coming up, sometimes it doesn't work out. But who's to say that I'm the one who's setting up the trend? It's for whatever works for you the best, but definitely remote working environment is something that is personal to a company's culture and the product manager. But we've definitely see a rise in remote working environment, especially in the big FANG companies, I would say. Even LinkedIn went remote completely last week. Talking about the third one, we see product management as a service platform. So what I mean by this is that product management involves a lot of communication, a lot of stakeholder management. So it's a stereotype where people might say that product managers are only doing meetings all day. I think that's why I call my meeting Monday. But that's actually not true, I would say. A lot of these meetings are done for a reason to move along your roadmap to meet your goals. So, but how do we do that? How do we make these processes of discussing and efficiency improved? We basically create product management tools. Product plan is a management tool basically that helps product managers align their roadmap according to their OKRs and move forward on a quarterly basis. There are many others coming up, but tools like Trello board, Asana, all these tools are a service platform for product managers to optimize their practice, to make their workload that can be already automated in a way where they don't have to do this manual effort. Machine working with the PMs. I think that's really important because this comes or ties into AI as well, because I feel like machine learning is really big. I mean, we are working with a lot of companies, we are working with AI to basically get insights, and we are teaching machines these algorithms so that they can learn human aspects or human perspectives. But a machine is nothing without a human being. So even though a person might click something and might get 10 results to whatever they have searched, but there's a person who sat behind that machine, fed in that algorithm, and then that machine basically learned that behavior to move forward. So definitely I see here that in the future that there's going to be a lot of collaboration. There's going to be a lot of like tending means of like technology disrupting or leading to like less employment as well. That could be the case, but like definitely machines will be working better and bigger with PMs. And then most importantly, product management as a science. I spent $60,000 on my bachelor's degree, not even knowing that something like product management existed. So product management as a science, I think, is going to develop into some sort of a course. Even though it's not formulated as a course, I feel it's definitely a science of itself. It deserves to be called a science because there's so many levels to it. There's so many problems, or there are so many ways that it can be made efficient. There are so many domains where product management as a practice just differs from each other. So, and so many people from different backgrounds are part of product management as well. So product management definitely I see is as a science, and that's why we have so many courses coming into place. That's why Bosky has PM Dojo in terms of where she wants to break the trend in her community, that everyone is equal and given their professional background, they can break into product management. But when we talk about trends, I think it's really important to talk about disruptions as well, because disruptions is something that makes us think. I think it's something that basically falls, an emergency comes to your door. That's when you are alert. You want to make sure that you do the right move at the right time. So I feel like the biggest disruptions that we see right now is that business disruptions more frequent than ever. So companies are being created faster, companies are growing faster, but companies at the same time are falling faster. So a lot of, I've seen even, I don't know if you guys know, in Europe, the biggest e-bank that we have is called N26. Since N26's inception in 2014, 30 members of their company became entrepreneurs by launching their own products. So like entrepreneurship is really growing, but not every project that you take is going to be successful, because in today's market or in today's environment, it's really hard to find product market fit. That's why that point is really emphasized on. If you do really find a product market fit in a really large market where you see potential, you can move forward. But if not, there are many disruptions that can come into the business where you don't take into calculation of how your product should be, what problem is it solving, if there is no product market fit. So these things are definitely that can break down your business or your idea and not launch it more than 100 customers or 200 customers and basically shut you down to move on to the next step. Societal fragmentation continues. I think with the inception of internet, we saw, or I thought that maybe we'll break ways and everyone would be inclined in terms of equality, but that's not the case. Only, I would say, the really people who are, I guess my parents really helped me to have these perks of like going to a high school, having internet, playing soccer, things like that. So like not everyone is destined to have internet or the accessibility to internet to basically get their knowledge or share knowledge. So I feel definitely that as a barrier, because anytime now that we see people standing up to especially right-wing parties or governments, basically the next step is to cut down internet. That's what we've seen right now in Afghanistan happening. We've seen multiple times these things in India happening as well, especially in Kashmir. The other thing is climate change or world pandemics. That is definitely a disruption, because that changes the way people respond to products. That definitely changes the way where people perceive products. It can change a problem space completely. Maybe it existed before a certain climate change or world pandemic, and maybe after COVID or a global climate change, that doesn't exist. I don't want to reiterate too much on climate change. I'm sure 99.9% people on this call would believe are on the same page that climate change does exist. If you don't believe, then, and that's fine, but at least from my side, that's my perspective. Technology is definitely one of the biggest disruption today in product management. So thinking about the different stacks that developers are working with, or how easily accessible a person can make a website now without even a line of code. So like no code development is definitely going up, which is also helping entrepreneurs launching their business by themselves and not paying developers a large sum of money. So technology is something that is so evolving that as product managers and product management as a practice that you need to be uptuned with. You need to think about it. You need to have an eye in the future to think, okay, if something is not working, definitely with your engineering manager or engineering background would definitely help you to understand what the scope is or the pros and cons for different technology that you're using, and what would be the advantages in the future if you would go on with that technology. So having said that, I want to talk about the adaptive focus on our past, present, and future. I'm a big Bang Theory fan, so I thought this GIF right here would definitely fit the theme of this presentation. So as I said, the adaptive focus, I mean that as product managers, what we are in the present, how do we move forward to the future? So thinking about your product or the problem space that you're working in, you do your customer interviews to understand the product problems that you're having in the present with the eye in the future as to what you want to build. So as product managers or as product management in a practice, you want to be really focused on how your product has evolved in the past, what is in the present, and what can you do to evolve it to make it solve a bigger and better problem for the people that you are creating or solving this problem for in the future. So that is the main goal of product managers or product management as a practice, at least from my perspective. That's what I feel. In terms of product management as a practice, I feel product management, the future looks really bright. I feel we have great product leaders, we have great product communities, we have so much abundance of resources around us, and many processes that are being resolved right now in order to make product management or product really evolve over a period of time. We've definitely seen that. I've seen growth product managers or like growth product management, especially in product-led organizations, really blowing up. That's what we call PLGs now. Product operations is something that is being built up now, especially for enterprises or for small startups, because they want to refine the process or they want to make the process even more efficient for product managers to be really good at their jobs. From my eye lens, or from what I've really learned from my mentors, product managers are really should be involved at the strategy and at the execution of that strategy. The other part of delivering your roadmap or the outputs for your roadmap is more so project management. That's something a PO can take care of. But as product managers, you should be really skilled in strategizing and thinking about what growth strategy or product strategy that you can use to help create better products, solve the right problem, and also meet your your business goals. So that being said, I feel given the points that we've talked about in terms of where we were, we talked about the trends that we currently see in product management. We talked about the historical disruptions that have basically come into place and has made product management evolve, which has changed how product managers think as well. And now we look forward to a bright future, but this future definitely depends on how we work our present and how we evolve our current processes and practices to make it better. So that being said, that was my quick presentation on the future of product, specifically product management. And now we can just have a candid Q&A session, and we can talk amongst the community as to what you think the future for product management is from your lens.
Thank you, Manav. That was a great talk. And yeah, like we taking time to absorb, but so now it's time for Q&A. So anyone have any questions, feel free to unmute and just ask, or you could type it in the chat. For now, I think Bosky have started asking some questions. We can start off by AI is a hot topic. I also see a lot of aspiring and potential PMs saying that they want to be an AI PM. Isn't it about the problems that need to be solved, and AI is a technology enabler?
I think that's true. Definitely AI is a technology enabler, but I feel it depends from use case to use case, because I work in Dynatrace right now where we use AI monitoring to better monitor your application performance. So that's an AI use case right there. So, but in the end, we definitely solve a problem. I mean to say from this question is that, as I said, AI is something that is definitely evolving. We do see AI now, let's say, for examples, in scanning your QR codes, that is AI, or basically, or governments basically picking up scans from a camera and getting identification for a person, that is AI. So definitely there are pros and cons to it. AI can be enabled for good as well as for bad as well, where human rights questions come into place as to what data can be taken and not. So that question, I feel like I don't have a crystal ball to make it easy or to have some predictions right there, but I feel it definitely depends on use case to use case. As far as that I have seen is that the core is to solve a problem from a product manager perspective, but AI can be used as an enabler to learn the model that you want to treat the data with to better answer those problems with evidence to move forward and to solve customer problems. So I would agree with that argument as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, and there's also, I'll go to Ashley, who asked, what are some of the unique challenges for a PM, especially if you are just starting out in the field? What are some habits that you've acquired to build community?
I think the first unique challenge that I face as a PM is that I told myself that I need to be shameless. I need to be shameless if I don't know something and I want to reach out to people. I need to be shameless if somebody asks me that I can reach out to them, then I will definitely do it. So I think it's really important as a PM to, especially early in the field, to really reach out and have like a 90-day plan. I think that's really cliche for any PM now. There are like billion articles on Medium or any Stack Overflow or Quora as well, how your first 90 days should look like, but really define it, what your goals are. And as a PM, what I did was, or what I'm currently doing right now is I'm picking on low hanging fruits, which I know I can run with and I can provide some value and I can show my expertise to my peers and my directors as well, that this is something that I'm really passionate about. This is something that I know this problem space, and definitely it provides me some mentorship and possibilities as well to get some guidance from them while I'm working through the problem when I'm having questions. So, and as part as the community that you asked, what are some habits that you would be acquired as a PM to build a community? So I moved from Toronto to Linz, and I really missed my friends and family back home. So one thing that I missed in Toronto was a product and community via Mind the Product. And when I came here, I saw the ecosystem for Linz. I thought there was a great potential with the startups and enterprises that existed here in Linz. So what I did was I just reached out to the community organizer from Mind the Product. And I said that I want to be a co-organizer or start a community here in Linz. So I feel it takes initiative as a habit to build a community first. And if you really want to dwell your time in the community, because if you really think that this is something that will empower you and empower the same community at the same time, then definitely you're in the right place. And people are always ready to have a candid talk, at least in the product space. So you can definitely launch something, and even if you get our traction, it will grow. So just as a metric, I love to give evidence always in my conversations. So for the first 6 months, we only had like 10 people as part of our community. And in the next year and a half, maybe it was COVID, we've grown up to 84 now that people can join us virtually. So there's definitely been a drastic change in our growth, but definitely along the way, I've definitely learned what things to do, what things that I didn't do so good, how to share better events, how to send out more type form requests in terms of getting feedback. So, or even having a survey done to get the NPS score for a talk so that I can share that with the community to understand what their feedback is.
Yeah. Does that help answer your question, Ashley?
Yes, it's very helpful. And I was even thinking about, in your work and how you wanted to, possibly reach out to others and, like you said, be shameless in a sense, and what that looks like in, building that type of community, where you may be working with teams, but you're not really a part of a team, like marketing or strategy. What does that look like for you?
I mean, when I say shameless, I mean like just don't be like very shameless. Like maybe it's always good to ask questions that I know that stakeholder or that point person can answer me. I wouldn't reach out with a question, an engineering question to a marketing person and ask them, can you answer this for me? Because it doesn't bring anything to them or to myself in that time. So I feel as PMs, obviously be shameless, but to be a successful PM in any organization, I think prioritization is key from day-to-day basis. You need to have your day really prioritized in how much time you're going to spend collaborating, stakeholder management, while you want to block some time for yourself to think about the problems that you're working on, or for a roadmap, or for cleaning up your backlog or something like that. So for me right now, currently, I'm working on a big problem where, let's say it's a licensing problem for our product. And most of the stakeholders that I have are in the US. So I know from a prioritization side that I won't be working on that usually after 2 p.m. my time. So it's 8 a.m. EST in Detroit. So that gives me already a step in the future if I want to sync with them, if they want to have some questions, meeting in the line, you want to discuss about strategy or the product roadmap, then this is what we do. So, and definitely I feel you have to gain some confidence in terms of relationship building as a product manager, because you definitely need to have some people that you can reach out to. You would know this person would have the resources that would help you get to where you want to go with the problem that you're working for. So these dynamics are really changing from organization to organization. So I feel as a person, if you are really open and you're ready for the challenge of like creating relationships, owning communication and stakeholder management, then it's a really good sign that you can already bring everyone together to form a consensus on the decisions that you want to make, with supported with data and evidence to move forward.
Thank you.
Yeah, so April asked that you mentioned having understanding scope, so having an eye into the future and looking at the pros and cons of a tech might be easier with those with a technical background. So what resources would you suggest for non-technical PMs to build this skill?
So let's break down that question. So I think for every product manager, it's really important to have one eye in the future. So if you're building something for today, you got to think how this problem that you're solving can actually become a pain for a customer down 6 months or a year, or maybe your competitors are doing something really different that you can't meet right now according to your resources, but you want to be sure that if some trend or disruption comes into place, that you're already prepared for it. Talking about technology in that sense, it definitely helps a person from a technical background to assess this hypothesis that they might have in terms of pros and cons, for understanding the technology or what technical stack to use, what are the pros or cons there in terms of maintaining that stack, or how the user experience might change when they change the front end or that application, things like that. But for a non-technical person, how can they build this skill? I feel, especially with a technical background, it's not really necessary, but I feel you can build a relationship with your engineering manager, or you can do some small courses in terms of like learning what is an API, or how does HTTP response body work, or simple things like what is a server, how does backend calls communicate with your front end calls, something that really interests you, something that is genuine from your inside, something that you want to learn, so that even that upskills you, so that you can have a conversation with your engineering manager or that engineering front person to know how you want to move ahead. Or let's say they push out a release, and you want to understand what is the scope of the technology currently right now that they're using, or they're thinking about changing the stack in the coming months or years. So that will give you a strong baseline or threshold in your own skill, and better align with your needs technically for the future as well. So I mean, there's again plenty of resources out there. So Udemy or like Facebook or even LinkedIn to get what an API is. I always ask PMs who are coming from a non-technical background to first look up what an API is, because right now, I mean, APIs are worldwide. Whatever you do now is API based. So like, even getting to know what an API does, or how does it work. Best example being you're sitting in a restaurant and a waiter comes and gives you food, or basically gives you a menu card to order food and goes back into the kitchen, so that that is basically how you get your API response back. So your food is your API response. So like you just understanding the basics of technology would definitely help you keep an eye in the future as well, even if you're coming from a non-technical background.
Manav, can I just share a couple of resources on this topic? I know we are running short on time as well,
sure.
But for anyone who comes from a non-technical background, obviously it can be daunting, but also know that there are a few things. Of course, Swipe to Unlock is one of the very, very famous books, kind of gives a really good kind of a rundown of the different technologies. It's written by one of the product managers at Facebook, ex-Facebook. It's a good resource. But I think when it comes to understanding the technology and everything that Manav was saying, as a PM, you have to understand conceptually, right? And you also have to appreciate how technology works, the kind of problems it can solve, the potential, the drawbacks. And that's what is expected of a PM, right? So of course, you can read all of the resources, you can learn SQL. I mean, these are good skills to have, but it's not necessary to kind of know the coding. You're not going to have those kind of conversations. You can always use your, one or two people in the technical teams as your partners, where you can have these kind of conversations. The other thing is that system design is really important for PMs, irrespective of whether you're a technical or a non-technical PM. And so how does a system or an application get designed? Not at a coding level, but more so at a system level. And of course, April, we will be covering that in one of the workshops in PM Dojo as well. So stay tuned on that. But these are some of the ways that if you're coming from a non-technical background, you would be able to kind of upskill yourself and know that it takes time. Right. In tech, you'll always feel like you're catching up. You'll never know everything. The same thing as developers and engineers are also trying to keep on learning the new things. So I think just kind of be a little bit easy on yourself and know that you don't have to know everything, right? As long as you're open to asking questions. And this is where the shameless thing comes in as well. If you're not going to ask, you're not going to know, right? And so keep an open mind, have it more like a conversation rather than, I think sometimes, that ego comes in, or sometimes it kind of gets hard to accept that we don't know something. So I think just know that it's part of the process, right?
Exactly, and also be as PMs, I feel like there'll be more times where we are wrong, and that's the beauty of our job, that we can be wrong. So don't be afraid to jump in the unknowns, because we kind of need to find the answer to make it unknown for the people that we are working with.
Yeah.
So
yeah, absolutely. And I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves as product managers that we need to be those people in the organization who always have the answers. And over time, much later on in my career, I've kind of, I think, accepted and become much more forgiving for not knowing the answers. And my job is not to know the answers. My job is to know who I need to bring into the room so that we as a team can find the answers together. And that was a big mind shift change for me that I needed, that I think was a game changer.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Yes, and we could finish off with a question from Marianne, who mentioned, she's asking, you mentioned that the PM versus PO distinction, which has been a widely discussed setup. Do you see product management as becoming more fragmented in the future? Example, product manager versus product owner versus product marketer, and etc. If you could expand on that.
I think it's already fragmented, especially with product operations coming into place right now. And it's an internal family war right now, because my sister, she's in New York, and she's a PO, and I'm a PM. So I always tease her that she's working in a delivery setup, or let's say she's output based, because she basically has to align what features that need to go out. And she's definitely on a more technical background with the engineers that she's working with. And as a PM, I feel we definitely align more on the strategy side of how we want to strategize better our product strategy to meet our roadmap goals. That basically trickles down to a PO, basically. So, I mean, there are different definitions, given that there's an Agile manifesto of how people work with PMs and POs, mostly when we do jobs. And that's what Marty Kagan and especially Teresa Torres come out with, is that PMs do PM work, but they also do a lot of project management work of handling tickets and this and that. But holistically, a PM should be working on strategy and execution of that strategy, because that is where the real problem is getting solved, or you're taking into place as to what problems are really necessary for your business to sustain. In terms of fragmentation, as I said, I think it's really optimal right now, at least from my side, that fragmentation and clarity should be there in what a PM does, what a PO does. With products op also coming into place, they're responsible now for fishing out data, especially supporting arguments for PM in providing why we want to move further with the current roadmap that we have, or why we are specifically saying no to this right now with the consensus of the stakeholders that we are having. So this basically helps to make product management and product development more efficient, more cleaner. Obviously, it raises a lot of eyebrows at times, because it might be a lot of collaboration, a lot of overlapping of stuff. But when is product management only one domain? It involves everything. It involves marketing, it involves sales, it involves UX, it involves development. So it depends on which space you're working with, it depends on which organization you're working with. But I mean, we have product ops right now in our organization with 3,000 employees. So that definitely helps my day-to-day activities as a PM in terms of getting data, or like fishing through data with like SQL queries, because that's something that I don't have to do, and product ops basically helps me to get those answers.
I think, Manav, like you bring a really interesting point. Like, I think, I don't know how it's going to change, but I think that for me, like when I look at it, I think one of the biggest differences in the fragmentation comes at the size of the organization. So like really teeny tiny, like early stage startups who have PMs. I mean, everyone is kind of doing everything. So it's kind of very, very challenging to even expect that you're going to have all these different distinct fragmented roles. I think I almost like to think of them as that these are different focus areas that you need to think of if you want to kind of solve a problem and eventually launch a successful product that kind of achieves the business outcomes and also kind of meets the unmet needs in the market, right? How it gets done, it's like how the food gets cooked in the kitchen. It'll really depend on the number of resources or the chefs that you have in the kitchen, right? And that's going to depend on the size of the organization, the runway that that organization has, and whether, again, that organization is matured enough, which the hope is that with time, maturity is going to increase. But for startups and smaller size companies, like it's going to be so difficult, right? Same thing in design too. Like in some larger companies, you have UX, you have UI, you have marketing design, you have service design. And in most average organizations, design is lumped into one and the designer does everything, right? So I think it's kind of really, I think it's, I think we should be familiar with a lot of these things and comfortable. Like in all my life, I was fortunate enough just twice to have a dedicated product marketer and a designer, which was really interesting. But no, totally agree. Sorry.
No, I think it's interesting also the way that, because as the company grows, like in what way you make that distinction, like like if you look at Spotify, they cut very vertically. So you don't have that distinction between product manager and product owner, but you have kind of one person who may be responsible for a very, very small part. And then you still have to have the collaboration and that alignment with a lot of other people. But it's a different kind of alignment than if you have that PMPO. And I think like both of them, it's kind of an interesting question. Both of them have advantages and disadvantages. You have to cover if you're a PMPO, then you have to cover a huge area by yourself for a very small part. PMPO, I've worked in both kind of setups, and PMPO, you kind of you have if as a PO you are not really responsible for the outcome, because that is actually responsible for the PM, you've got that kind of a cut off there. So it will be interesting to see how that develops in the future, because there's so much discussion around it, and there's so many people who are vehemently against it, some people who are vehemently for it. So I think it's going to be interesting to see how that develops long term.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think
Yeah,
just
definitely.
to add to that is just saying like Spotify, Netflix, and Google, they have their products are really big and successful because they have really great product pioneers there, and a lot of companies and startups out there are trying to copy them. Even like OKRs, that's something that Google came up with, and everyone's like talking about OKRs and implementing OKRs, but like OKRs are not that easy to implement, just saying. So you really need to work through your company and your product strategy to know which OKRs you wanna implement to basically see what objectives or outcomes you wanna meet and what KPIs you wanna use to measure these OKRs. So as said, I think it's a pretty good argument by Bosky that it definitely depends on the company size. In the startup that I worked in Toronto, they did not have a PO as well. There was just a head of product, basically having everything. We had a designer who was working as a freelancer. Sometimes there's not even a designer. But now in an enterprise, I have the ability to go to a design team or to go to a customer marketing team to basically for surveys or for questions or for targeting some customers specifically to get that help. So definitely it depends on case to case, I would say here.
Yeah. I mean, even just like from my aspect, looking at jobs, there is stuff like product owners, and then there's like if you look at communities of product communities, there's people asking, even what's the difference between a product marketing manager and a product manager, and there's a lot of these distinctions that are already happening now, and I think like as things are going to be more mature, or are going to be more defined. But then, like Rossi said, it just really depends on the type of company, I think. So.
Yeah, and there's so much overlap as well. Like I started learning a little bit more about product marketing, and a lot of the stuff that falls in the kind of the realm of the product marketer. You're kind of like, well, this is actually also the job of a product manager. So if you've got both of those, like how do you kind of, where does one obviously need to kind of collaborate with each other, and then you probably can add value to each other's jobs in a very real way. But yeah, it's a user UX researcher even, which
Absolutely.
also falls. Yeah, it's interesting how they do. When my first job, it was like writing requirements. All of those other jobs didn't exist. So
yeah. Okay. Maybe let's see if there's one more question. I think I go back to Bosky's earlier one. What are your thoughts on EQ versus IQ in product management? Like, is there going to be a change, if any? So, yeah, I could talk a bit about that. Or if Bosky can like, if Bosky can, yeah.
To be honest.
No, I think my whole question, and this comes from, I think, one of the workshops that we just had. So it's like so fresh in my mind right now from the morning. Like we talk a lot about, again, the technology and all of the disruptors and trends that's happening. And I love whatever is happening on the technology side, but I think a lot of times, like I question, right? Like what happens to the emotional intelligence out of all of this? Because I think so a lot of times it is expected that you need to kind of be smart. No one talks about the fact that you need to be emotionally smart as well. I think we always talk about you need to be like a really smart cookie in order to be successful as a product manager. So I wanted to kind of get a sense from Manav, like what are your thoughts with remote work increasing, people from all over the world kind of working together? Like how is this going to play out?
I mean, I feel like emotional intelligence is something that is personal to everyone. I mean, I had pretty bad grades in my high school. Trust me, my mother was surprised how I made it to university. But I think it evolves, right? It evolves to the interest area where you want to put yourself in, and you actually genuinely have the passion to move yourself towards that path in terms of like saying that, okay, if I want to get into product management, these are the skills I want to learn. And whatever your background is or whatever that you're carrying over from whatever profession that is, you're bringing that intelligence with you to maybe help you upskill your PM skills at the same time. So in terms of, let's say, remote work, I generally prefer, as I said, it helps me to better collaborate with people on a day-to-day basis in a working environment. Even though I've spent a lot of money now in my house infrastructure in terms of getting a standing up desk, a chair, things like that. But I feel it's just better collaboration as a PM to sit together, have a coffee, discuss about a problem, and to move further, because you want to move that needle from 0 to 1 to achieve that goal. So yeah. So that is what I would say to that answer. If I guess it doesn't meet your needs right now with what I've answered, but yeah, but I still got to think about it.
Yeah, that's kind of interesting, because you could think about when you're managing, like the PMs have to collaborate with all different types of people. So maybe in even some aspects, like they have to be emotionally intelligent to lead. But yeah.
And it's a tough thing, right? Because you get so emotionally invested. And when you get so emotionally invested, it's hard to kind of, I think, pull out and objectively look at the situation 100% of the time, or for most part of your day, right? And it's a very stressful role. And so to always have it together, have your dash to have it together all the 24 hours a day, it's like it becomes really hard. So yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, one example I can give even from today is that I'm working on a problem for our licensing model that we have specifically for our customer, which seems to be a unique case. And the PM and the developer that I'm working with kind of did not know where to lead with. And I was a bit surprised as to who knows this answer right now, because I'm not the one who needs to know this. So it's kind of giving, I feel as a PM, you kind of form a chain of communication where you might get a resource on one person and then you might get a B resource on the other person. And you kind of have to form a solution with the resources that you are being given to come to that answer to basically support or to solve that problem that you're working on. So I feel even if we do become emotionally invested on a day-to-day basis, we should never have a perceived confirmed yes or no to anything, because I feel if we do that, then we are making this more personal, because a PM's job is really to provide data, provide evidence, provide why do we think it is the way it is, and then have a consensus around the stakeholders to reach a decision. Because we can't make a decision by ourselves, or maybe we can at times. Maybe that's why PMs are told to be intuitive at times as well, or to take their hunch feeling that they're having for something that they don't know. But it's mainly around the majority where you wanna lie and you wanna take a decision. But obviously, don't be a yes man or yes woman to just say, okay, that's what we're doing, but always say no when you know that that's not the right decision as well.
It's a very, very hard thing though, Manav. I've fallen into the traps multiple times, and I've talked with so many other PMs at so many different levels. And this has been one of those struggles and the tension that exists in product management, because it's one thing not to be emotional, but because the passions are high, right? Because it's just like a startup founder, right? And product management is very much like entrepreneurship in a lot of different ways, right? It may not be your idea, but you have to believe in that idea with evidence and with data and with all of that. But at some point, when that belief turns into that kind of a belief that you're trying to rally the entire organization and all bunch of people, and that becomes, it's hard not to get invested. And it's hard as humans, we have a heart and a mind, right? The left brain, the right brain. Biologically, we are programmed in a way where we can't look at everything objectively. Otherwise, we would be a bot or a machine. And so I think it's really, really challenging. We kind of have these moments where we kind of slip. And again, being high EQ doesn't mean that you always will be looking at things objectively, right? At the end of the day, you're dealing with humans, right? Your customers are humans, your stakeholders are humans, you yourself are a human. So it's a really, really challenging thing, right? It's one of the things that makes it very, very challenging part of the role.
Definitely. Yeah.
Awesome.
Okay, so this has been an amazing event and is mostly a conversation. I'm so glad that everyone participated and hopefully gained some insight. Thank you, Manav, for speaking, and Bosky for also helping host.